Welcome, everybody, to this week's Take Charge of Your Life discussion, where we give you tips on how to live healthy in your body, live empowered in your mindset, and live free in your spiritual realm. My name is Tish Taylor. I am the owner and founder of Growth-Centric Living. I'm a mindset trainer and personal transformation guide. My passion really is to give you the rules of life and help you to be empowered to be your most highest version of you. And this is my co-host, Roberta.
Hey, welcome everyone. I am the owner of Wake Up to Life Wellness, and I too am super focused on helping people transform in the physical realm, of course, knowing that, we can heal ourselves to optimal functioning. And like we talk about in a lot of our sessions, that health is so critical, right, for our lives. And it's such a big issue in our life today. So letting people know that healing is entirely possible and living at a high level of health is what we were designed for. And then also working with the Elite Mentorship Forum as a fellow certified trainer with Tish. And like she said, knowing that people can live at their highest potential in every realm of life is truly my passion.
Like Roberta alluded to, we're both elite mentorship trainers, which were certified under our mentor, Mr. Peter Sage. And in case you aren't aware of who he is a globally recognized motivational speaker known for his deep understanding of human behavior and self-mastery. Roberta and I have learned an abundance of knowledge for him and have decided to continue on his mission of raising global consciousness. So thank you so much for being here with us today and being willing to grow and invest some time and energy into yourself. Our agenda for our calls is that we're going to show you a little clip of Peter, and then we're going to break it down and discuss that whatever he talked about in the video, which we'll introduce in a second, and give you tips on how to really embody this into your life in the realms of living empowered mindset, living healthy in your body, and living free in the spiritual realm.
Yes, our topic for today is going to be rules and values with a little 60-second reel that Peter created. And it's from our module 10 in our Elite Mentorship Forum called Mirror Mirror. So we're really looking to dive deep into understanding ourselves and our psychology in the module. We'll just touch on that in this discussion. But the framework for this is that most people are living life reacting to emotions, right? I mean, most of us are really good at reacting to life. That's kind of what we've been taught to do. So when things are really good, we feel up, and when they're not so good, we feel down, and we let life lead us into our emotional state. But if we truly want to be empowered, we have to stop letting emotions dictate our lives and instead consciously define both our values and then the rules that we set to experience them. So kind of a little reference here is that a value is what's important to you. So that's kind of simple to understand. But the rule is the standard you've consciously or unconsciously set for how you know when that value is met or that value is expressed. So we want to make our life simple and easy and not have all these rules that are too difficult for us to ever feel like we're winning. And so this reel will give us some insight into that, and it'll be fun to see what he has to say.
Be honest with yourself. If I was to ask you the question, what is most important to you in life, how fast would you be able to answer? See, most people have never really sat down and understood what's most important to them in terms of their values. We have an idea, we have a sense, but what you'll find is that what's important to most people actually ebbs and flows along with their emotional state. When I'm excited, I'll give a different answer to when I'm upset. But you can't really live your life reacting to your emotions when it comes to something as powerful as your values. Being able to have clarity of values is one thing. Being able to understand what has to happen for you to experience your values, that's a whole different subject. Two people could value health, but for one person to feel healthy means they have to go to the gym 4 times a week. The other person simply has to take a deep breath and be grateful. So what are some of the things that you value in life? Have you ever thought about what rules you have or you've created that allows you to feel them? Leave a comment below.
So if we shift right into our live more empowered, this is our mindset section of our discussion. So as Peter said, we've talked about it before, how you have a conscious and a subconscious. Most of us feel like maybe we know what our values are, but the reality is they're probably unconscious, most of what has been taught to us to think is important. And this is why they're kind of wavering and changing. And we behave not necessarily aligned with what we think is important. Like you suggested, we tend to behave more based on our emotional state. And our decisions, therefore, lack consistency and most likely empowerment because we aren't consciously thinking about what's important to us and how do we feel like we're accomplishing or living by those values. And that's really the importance of this definition of what is a value, what's important to you, and what are your rules. In this section in my growth journey was completely eye-opening for me. We always say that there's sort of like 3 stages to growth, and the first one is awareness. And that's really what this is all about, is mindfully thinking about what is important to you and what are the rules. What have you actually set by yourself? What are you living by that maybe you weren't consciously aware of before? Uh, for example, maybe I have a value that growth is important, and I certainly have been reading a lot of things and on this journey for a long time. However, what I discovered is that the rule that I set for myself in order to feel like I was accomplishing this growth was that I needed to succeed every time in order to feel like I was growing. I was basically looking for perfectionism of, I learned something and then I apply it immediately to my life. And so in reality, I never really felt like I was growing. I couldn't see the shift in myself. So I made this value and this rule too complicated. And that's what a lot of people are kind of doing. Instead, what I have learned from this growth journey and from Peter's work is that a rule that's a little bit more easy for me to achieve, like anytime I learn something new, I'm accomplishing my growth value. It became more about the effort so that I could feel empowered regularly about the effort I was putting into my growth and knowing that those changes would come. If I keep continuously and consistently putting in effort, then that would come. And I had a lot of values, and honestly, that I didn't actually know how they ranked out, and just so many things that I learned from this module about myself and what was causing my actions.
Yeah, for me too, this was a very, very powerful shift because really our rules were programmed, most of them from someone else, growing up. I mean, I think of that I was not feeling like I was, successful or productive was a good word that I grew up with. I grew up on a farm. So everything we did was like about productivity and getting things done and endless tasks and being tough and, keep going until you get it done and never complain, that kind of thing. So it was just like that mission minded, let's keep moving. And I just never felt like, now I feel like if I'm not moving all the time, or at least before I did this work, I felt like just unconsciously I could feel that kind of energy of disappointment with myself. Like, oh, I'm not, if I'm sitting, my dad would always say, if we're not moving, grass is growing under us. So it was like, keep moving, keep moving. And although that was a good value to have as far as, really having to move in life and get things done and take care of business, but to have to do it all the time. I literally burnt out like 3 times in my life. And the third time I like had a nervous breakdown because that rule was just pushing me unconsciously that no matter what I did, it was never enough. And I'm very like committed to things. I jump in, I give it my all, but I couldn't see that I was giving it my all. I just thought, oh, it's just not quite enough, So yeah, this was hugely freeing, even though it's it felt a little bit complex at the time. And I think there was some resistance of really looking into the mirror and really unpacking all this, but it's been, yeah, really a game changer, complete shift in my mindset and how I see myself and how I show up in the world. I do not have to be driven into, exhaustion in order to be, live in a beautiful world and live fully. So that's been my big reframe.
Amazing. I definitely learned a lot about myself and just what was running me. And for me, it turned out, even though I knew it was important to me, family, but that actually trumped everything in my life. So for me to feel love and connection, which meant that, other people around me were happy, hence my like people pleasing kind of desire that I definitely fell into, and just realizing what was motivating that, it was actually my values and my rules. That, the rule I had that in order to feel loved and connected with somebody else, that I meant I had to drop everything and I had to be there for them every second of every day. And a lot of the times, forsaking my own stuff and my own needs. So that kind of leads us into our tip on mindset. First of all, be aware. So do your own values and rules audit. Write down what you think are your top three values, what you think are the most important things to you. Maybe again, it's love and connection. Maybe it's growth. Maybe it's work ethic. Maybe it's success. There are tons of things that you could Google as far as what possibly could be values and what's important to you. Hopefully, they come kind of easy to you. But the harder part is going to be to sit and think about, how do you feel like you're accomplishing that? What actions do you take that makes you feel like you're aligned with that value? What is the rule for you to know that you're living with that thing that's important to you, that you're accomplishing that within your life? And you might be surprised at what comes up.
Yes, I love that inventory that we just take, just even in those still moments, we're taking a shower or, driving somewhere mindlessly and something comes to us, we can actually, give ourselves that opportunity to intercept just the continual programming, there's just that moment where we maybe get a different thought or a different perspective, and we can kind of lean into that. And that's kind of what this work is consistently bringing us into, is that awareness and getting that left brain to quiet down a little bit and quit being in charge and running the show, and allow ourselves some creative insights into ourselves and really what's causing us to do what we do. I'm always fascinated by how people function, including myself. So that segues us into the live healthy in the body realm of this framework. And of course, I'm going to use health as the example of a value. Like Tish said earlier, we're all seeking health. That's a big one. But the disempowering rule that I could have around health is that I only feel healthy if I work out 6 days a week and I eat perfectly and I never get sick. And when I think about that, a lot of people that come to work with me, I can tell those rules are kind of spinning in their head, like they're kind of tentative. Well, I don't know if this is going to work for me, because they don't trust themselves to be able to, quote, follow through. But if we shift our where we're trying to get to, our outcome, and say, well, really all we have to do is change one food at a time, or maybe walk 10 minutes a day to start with, or, some simple way to make us win. So a more empowering rule for that would be, I feel healthy every time I honor my body, whether that's through, the right food, or whether it's through moving my body or taking a deep breath. Also, those are just ways that I set myself up to win and see myself as someone who's doing good for myself in the health realm. And then of course, when we're inspired and we feel, like we're being complimented, even if it's just by our own psyche, we want to do more of that. Nobody likes to be judged and critiqued all the time. We want to have some empowering framework to say, yeah, that's, you're doing okay, you're doing great, keep going. And so when I think of that, I realize how, just like we talked about in the mindset, we have to lower that need for perfectionism, because that perfectionistic drive was never our rules to begin with. Someone else, gave us those rules.
It's how we interpreted kind of life and what was, happening to us, our environment, which has trained a lot of our sort of subconscious. And as you're speaking, I just wholeheartedly fell into this. I realized, as I was doing my own personal audit, that my health rule was very strict. I said health was important to me, but I was totally in that disempowering thing where I thought I needed to work out 6 days a week, and, never get sick is another aspect of which, actually, knock on wood, I didn't do too bad at, but I needed to make that a little bit easier and actually really make health more of a priority up my list, and realizing that I was, sacrificing things, and we'll get into some of those specific examples in a second, but sacrificing my health for other values that I had prioritized above that. And it was actually disempowering me, and because other things weren't functioning properly, like we talk about a lot on our show, and just how important our physical health is to everything else going well in your life.
Yeah. And I think with, when people have a disempowering rules around health, they will literally walk away from this health focus and let their life keep degenerating, really, to the point of, extreme illness and even death. So it really is a critical thing to really work on our mindset around these things, and find an empowering way to embrace something that's so critical to our being, right, is health. And in that, I have a couple examples of ways we can invite ourselves to redefine our health rules. So if we're talking just simplifying our movement, instead of those rigid gym standards, like I can adopt a rule that says I'm healthy every time I move my body with intention, right? Sometimes I'll just stop and stretch and, in my chair to stretch my neck, or I'll, go up and down the stairs, or I just lay on my back and do a full body stretch. And it feels so good. It's just something so simple to feel better, in my physical body. Another one is to nourish instead of punishing myself. So like a lot of people say, well, if I can't eat healthy, then there's no point in doing a nutrition program. And I just laugh because I'm thinking, well, if you're already very depleted because you're not eating healthy, then of course doing a nutrition program would be the best thing to do, because your body has to get nutrition from somewhere. And that would be an empowering way to get started, right? To start giving that body some momentum and some empowerment, maybe even some energy, right? Some physical and mental energy to make those next steps and make those decisions. So instead of punishing myself with saying I don't eat healthy enough, I could say I feel healthy every time I fuel my body with food that energizes me. It doesn't have to be every single food to feel good. I can maybe have one food out of a meal that's super healthy, and just give myself credit for that too.
It's important to think about just the momentum that I can already feel spiraling as we do that. That I don't need to eat healthy 7 days a week to feel like I'm nourishing my body. Maybe my breakfast, maybe I start with the rule of my breakfast is the healthiest meal I eat. So every day for breakfast, I, at least give myself a foundation. And that was, as a busy mom, for in all honesty, that has become one of the values for me, and how I got more nutrition into my body was that I could eat dinner with the kids, and you know what, they're maybe a little bit more picky and stuff, despite our best efforts to get them to eat more vegetables, etc. But dinner could be a family meal, and then maybe that hits another value. But specifically breakfast and lunch and throughout the day, I tried to nourish myself as much as possible. And, just kind of segregating that. Didn't have to be all or nothing.
Yeah.
In order to try to meet my health values.
That's well said. Yes, it's not all or nothing, but momentum and movement in the right direction, our direction of travel. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple more areas that we could redefine our health rules, and that's in the being able to celebrate our rest and recovery time. So not feeling guilty when we sleep, like I used to. Like if I was sleeping too long, I definitely felt guilty, whatever that meant, whatever too long was. But so creating a rule that honors rest. So I'm healthy every time I listen to my body and allow, for recovery. I know Tish and I were talking earlier, and it's, we kind of joke about it, but, like Peter has said, when he was in his 20s, he was so driven, and he said, I don't need to sleep. I can do that when I'm dead, So it's like, I'm thinking, how did we get so off track with how our body actually works that we decided that sleep really isn't important, and we'll just prop up our energy with like energy drinks and caffeine and things like that, which are absolutely over time, destructive to our organs and systems and our brain. Our brain really, really needs sleep. And so if people have brain fog and even, memory loss and dementia and Alzheimer's, over time, we haven't taken care of that brain. Otherwise, it wouldn't have broken down, so there's, sleeping and resting is critical. And then the last area was just to embrace the micro wins, like we've been talking about. I feel healthy when I choose water over soda, gratitude over stress or reaction, and then, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. And just those micro decisions is how we get to our next win, our next empowerment, our next, alignment with who, a higher version of ourselves. I think sometimes we think people that, really are quote successful or having a huge platform or, doing good things in the world, like they just happen to be naturally that person. And at least the ones I've listened to, they all had huge obstacles to overcome in their life, mentally, physically, in their soul work and just who they were and their identity. So we're all taking this journey together, and nobody's has this quantum ability to just, become a different person. And we're all taking these steps together to that better, more empowered version of ourselves.
Yeah, it's really about like whatever kind of works for you, wherever you're at right now, and then just continuously trying to raise the bar for yourself, and not with big leaps, like we said, so that it feels daunting and you never accomplish what it is you're trying for. It's about doing it a little bit at a time and what realistically makes sense for you.
Right, and knowing that if we put ourselves in a position where we can't win, we'll never start, and that's just, giving away our life basically to an old rule and an old program that doesn't even make sense anymore, to who we are and why we're here. So the tip for that is, the bottom line is, don't make health harder to experience. lower the barrier so that you feel healthy multiple times a day. And then that momentum that you'll start feeling and feeling good about yourself will compound into transformation over time. Because every time we do something good, not only do we mentally feel better and physically, but we just know in ourselves that, that we're doing something good. And everybody wants to follow that trail. Nobody wants to follow a trail where we just feel worse all the time. So by nature, we're going to gravitate towards, the momentum and the good choices we're making.
Beautiful. And on that leaves us to our last part of our discussion, which is the live free, our spirit soul connection realm. Freedom comes when your values align with your higher self. So rather than cultural programming or people pleasing, we talk a lot again about our conscious versus subconscious. And you've even heard us mention on our discussion today about how a lot of our rules and our values came from things outside of ourselves. We've been programmed. And in the live free section here, we really want to encourage you to reevaluate those values that you currently have and make sure that they're aligning with your spiritual self, with your higher self, with that source power, with the divine that really we're more of than we are physically. This is how you live your life freely as who you are, by aligning with that energetic source, the power that is within all of us. And without clarity, we misalign these values and instead live somebody else's life. We live what we're told to do instead of living authentically in our soul's alignment. So in this realm, your values might be really strict. If you do have a spiritual value, maybe it is something like living in peace and feeling peaceful in your life. But if your rule is, I can only feel peaceful when everything is perfect, again, you've missed the mark. There's no such thing as a perfect life. And regardless of, where we are on this growth spectrum, even the highest levels, they still have turmoil. They still have conflict that occurs. It's their mindset that we'll talk about a different day on how they kind of get through that. But don't make things too hard for yourself. Again, be discouraged so that you rarely feel what these values are if peace is something that's important to you. Instead, adjust your rule to allow source connection and be more present. And for many of us, that might be where we start, in just connecting regularly with our superpower. Peter Sage teaches that living in harmony with your values creates equilibrium, a resonance with life itself. So living fully empowered, first of having a value of connecting with that spirit realm, and then what your values are, what speaks to you, what makes sense to you, versus living in what others may say is important.
I love what you said about leaning into our superpower, really. When I think of it, the soul realm is probably my favorite and most focused realm for my life. Knowing that I'm an extension of my creator and I get my clarity and my alignment through that source, what I'm here for, my soul path, what my purpose is, what I was designed for, that came from my source creator. And so being in touch with that regularly and that getting that support and that help from the unseen world is really, really been a huge part of my life. And so I love this, kind of deep dive into this realm and understanding how I can create values around that. I've also been an avid seeker, right, for years in that realm. And so I kind of driven too in that. And I've been learning to relax more and knowing that I'm always connected to source. Like I don't have to prove myself or read enough or pray enough or anything, that I just am enough, period, just because of where I came from and who I am, right? How I was designed by this intelligent design. And that's really helped me a lot in this path of creating values in the spirit realm or the soul realm that align with me, kind of unfolding and expressing who I am unapologetically, and just really taking away all those rules, I guess, that said I had to do something to be something. I had to prove something in order to show up in a certain spiritual way or whatever. I just choose these days to align with who I really am. As we do this work, it creates a lot of integrity of being honest and authentic with ourselves and others, so that I show up everywhere the exact same person. I'm not people pleasing one person, trying to manipulate a different outcome. I mean, that's my intention, that's my focus, that's my goal. And that to me comes from that soul realm, that where I'm setting myself up to win by, some of my values, I guess, would be in that realm would just be authenticity, and then every time I show up just truly authentic with someone, or I'm honest, or I keep my word, then I'm living that value. And it feels really good to keep, adding to that and just finding more fun ways to, to express those values, and not by, striving and effort and trying to prove myself, which I did for a long time in my own mind, trying to prove to God that I was somehow good enough. I guess I feel like he or she already knows that as my creator. It was just a total disconnect, in how I related to that part of me.
Beautiful. It's funny. It's not funny, but amazing to me as we learn more about people and, are just kind of aware just how differently everything sort of hits us as well. I considered myself a faithful person, but when I really looked into this realm and the values here, what I learned about myself is that I was, faith really only kind of came in on Sundays when I, was practicing. I didn't know how to employ that into my life. And through my growth journey, I've just learned about how important it is to get quiet. Really daily, it has become an important value for me in connecting with that energy on a regular basis. That was the part I was missing. It wasn't really about, my faith as much as it was about me personally connecting, and whatever that looked like to me. Maybe for some people, it's prayer on a regular basis. For me, it looks like meditation and journaling, and just really sort of connecting with myself and that energy, and getting very familiar with the spiritual realm and my source, my highest version of me.
Beautiful.
And that kind of, so 2 points. A, we want to stress how important it is to connect with source and have spiritual values in this living free realm. But then also maybe looking at the ranking of your values, because, everything else, mostly outside external things like my connection with trying to make other people happy, trying to show that I had a great career, that I was, a great mom, and all of these other things that kind of clouded and pushed down my value of faith and my value of connecting with source, until I did this sort of growth journey and realized I need this to be the other way around. So, in all honesty, having like health and spiritual connection became some of the ones that were on the top as I sort of ranked through my values and learned about what really I feel like should be important and aligns with my highest self, and becoming that in this lifetime.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think of, through more of this work, we get to clarify that, the positioning of our values, because otherwise there's just like, if you Google, list of values, you'll get lots of them. It could be overwhelming, but we definitely dive in, and it makes sense when we're done, and we have very clear, understanding of what our maybe top 6 values are. And then we can focus on them and try to, really embody them and make them known in us and in the world. So it's a very cool journey to dive into this.
So our tip for the living free soul realm is, make one of your values aligning with source. Source, self, God, whatever that divine energy looks like for you in your life. And if you don't have a rule already for feeling like you're meeting this value, then create one that's easy to achieve, like we have sort of talked about in all of our discussion sections today. We recommend that you do this daily, and it could be something easy as, what I said, a morning routine where I'm quiet for a few minutes and I just breathe, or I meditate, or I journal. Again, whatever level that you're at, we just want to encourage you to keep kind of pushing the bar just a little bit, enough that it's achievable and you can feel like you are living these values in alignment with your highest power.
Excellent. So I'm just going to quick go over the summary of each of these areas, the mind, body, and soul. So for the mind, we mentioned thinking of your top value and what rules can you set for yourself to know you're living this value with a sense of winning. So the example I have here is like, if I want to feel love, I can say that every time I give somebody a hug, I feel love. I don't have to wait for everyone to love me or approve of me, to feel love. I can just do some expression of love, and that can be enough, for me to have that win in that moment. In the body realm, don't make health harder to experience. Lower the barrier so that you feel healthy multiple times a day, and that momentum, compounds into that transformation that we kind of naturally want and that we'll start feeling empowered by. And like Tish just shared, in the soul realm, so make one of your values aligning with source, or God. And if you don't have a rule for feeling this, like you're connected to source or that you have this alignment, we can create one. So like, for an example, I feel connected to source every time I close my eyes, take a deep breath, and remember I am not alone or separate. To me, that's a big thing, because I've always felt like kind of out on my own. I'm just kind of stuck in this crazy world and I got to figure it out. So to me, it's really helpful to feel connected to my higher power and to feel not alone, and that I got help. I got, non-physical help on the non-physical side of life. And that, to me, I definitely feel like I have that value of connection to source when I do that.
Today's discussion was really about awareness in what are your values and what are the rules that you have set for yourself. And if this has sparked something in you and you want to continue along this path, this actually, like we said, is an entire module. We spend 2 weeks talking about this in our premium Elite Mentorship Forum program. So if this is calling to you and you're on this personal growth journey and you really want to dive into this, not just on your own, then we encourage you to reach out. We offer free curiosity calls so you can find out more about the program, or even just have a discussion with us about where you're at and where you'd like to go on your growth journey.
Right. Thank you. That's awesome. And, knowing that, I always say we don't have to stay stuck, and there's truly no reason, because, I think about resistance to, like, I know there's like a trust deficit in the world where people really have a hard time trusting, which I get that because there's so much out there. But to, give ourselves permission to go down a path that we know and has, Peter's work has had like thousands of reviews on Trustpilot. We know that he has a proven track record of integrity, very high integrity and work. And so it's not like a risk or a like, oh, well, what if this works? What if it doesn't? It's proven. He wrote an entire book of an experience he went through in life where he lived out these principles in the toughest environment that most of us could imagine. And so, there is no wondering if this works. It just absolutely does transform our lives when we lean into it. And so, yeah, to invite you to enjoy this curiosity maybe that you might have, and to lean into it and reach out to us, that would be awesome. We would love to share this with you, because our passion is built on integrity and authenticity, and that we're walking this walk. Otherwise we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So that just leaves us with a quote here that says, your values set your compass, but your rules decide whether you ever feel fulfilled. So make your rules simple and you'll live in alignment every single day.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for spending your time with us today. We hope you've gotten some value from this, and we hope to see you again on our next talk.
See you next time. Thank you.